What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? What's good? What's up? To want the inner part of his ass crack. Blue about me not being his dad. After reading the book, she was like, "What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? What's good, people? What's up? What's up? What's up? What is up? It is me, L Teddy 27, and I am back for yet another review. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our review for Interview with the Vampire. It is season 1. It is episode 5. It is entitled A Vile Hunger for Your Hammering Heart. Listen, y'all. Listen. This episode was a lot, but it was so good. It was so good. It was so good. Listen, I know people have had mixed feelings on Claudia and the fact that Claudia is older than the movie, and Claudia and the new girl. Listen, I don't care what they say. This episode cemented that girl for me. She is playing the fuck out of her part. That girl is playing the Claudia. Do you hear me? I like the changes. I like the maturity in Claudia. I love the original Claudia from the movie. Don't get it twisted. Love her. But I love the difference. And I think people need to understand that there were quite a few changes in the movie that were different from the novels. And there are changes in this television series that are different from the novel as well. And so I think people should get out of their mind what they saw in the movie and just appreciate the television show for what it is. Because on its own, this was a great piece of television cinema. This was magnificent. This was great. This was great television, y'all. Let's get right down to it. So remember, we start off in present day. Louis is actually feeding on Rashid. And so Daniel is reading from Claudia's diary, and he's reading off of this list of people she killed, this kill list, and it'll be a name, and then it'll be their last words. And that's how she identifies the person, with their last words. So she'll have the name, she'll describe them a little bit, and then she'll say their last words, have their last words written. And it's this long grocery list. I mean, for a vampire, it would be a grocery list, but this grocery list of people that she killed, and with their last words. And so he's reading it, and so Rashid is talking to Daniel because Louis is clearly, his mouth is occupied on Rashid's neck. And so Rashid, Daniel is really conflating it too. It's just a freaking kill list, and what's going to happen when people read about this. And so Rashid is like, well, Rashid was like, well, aren't you about to do the same thing? Because what's about to happen to Louis, what you're writing is Louis's last words. He's about to have, when you publish this, he's going to have vampires from all over the country that descend upon Dubai to come and kill him. So you're no better than Claudia is in her diary, because you are literally writing Louis's last words. Because we know this is basically a suicide note. And it was that was impactful right there. It kind of made Daniel say, take a kind of a step back, and so forth. And and so Louis, after he, takes his mouth off of Rashid's neck from sucking his blood, um, he starts to talk about Rashid, and you get more. There's something about Rashid. There's a reason we keep being put face to face with Rashid. We keep interacting with Rashid. There's more to the Rashid story. I don't know if we'll get it all this season. I think that we'll get more of the Rashid story probably next season, because I know there's only 7 episodes, and I don't know that there will be enough time to do it, to flush that out. And I really want them to flush out the Rashid story. So, but Louis starts to talk about how Rashid is a creature of habit. He calls him monochromatic, like I'm sorry, metronomic. That's what he called him, like a metronome. And if you know what a metronome is, it's the thing that keeps the beat. If you're a musician, you know what a metronome is. You set it, and it keeps the beat so that when you're playing a piece of music, you won't get off beat. Normally, when you're playing music, you learn to tap your foot. But if your beat is off, you could be off with your foot tap. So you have a metronome that clicks and is unwavering, relentless. It is on time every time, and it just goes side to side, and it clicks, and it lets you know the beat pattern, and so forth. So it just keeps a steady beat for you. So when you're practicing and playing music, you can be, keep the beat. So what he's saying by that is that Rashid is unwavering. He's relentless. He is damn near betrothed to Louis, and the fact that his whole life work at this point is taking care of and being there for Louis. He talks about how he tastes like pineapples and honey because for at days before he allows Louis to feed on him, he does nothing but gorge himself off of honey and pineapples. He says that Rashid stays at 138 pounds, and when he gets to 139 pounds, he then goes and does 2 swims in the pool, so he loses that 1 pound. So you can see that Louis cares for Rashid a great deal. Does he care for Rashid as much as Rashid cares for him? That remains to be seen. I don't know, but we know Louis is very in tune with Rashid and what Rashid has going on. So then they get back to the story. They start to discuss how Claudia was heartbroken by Charlie's death, by her accidentally killing Charlie. Then we go back in time to actually flesh it out and see it. So um, they're in the house, and Louis seems to believe that Claudia, because Claudia did go through a bit of depression. She's a young adult. I believe at that point, I don't think she was. I think she was like 20. She was either 18. She was somewhere between 18 and 21. So she was, a young adult at that point. So him thinking she's depressed. He's thinking she's not coming out of her coffin, like she's starving herself. And Lestat is like, I don't care about her, girl. I'm not here for that little girl. I only made her to make you happy. She's like a little pet toy to Lestat. Lestat really wants no parts of Claudia at all. He has no use for her. He wants no parts of her. And he's like, can you get over it? She gone. If she did good, oh well, oh whatever. So, um, they're going back and forth, and Louis is just like, um, just besides himself, not knowing that the truth of the matter is she wasn't starving herself. She wasn't depressed. She was out there enraged. Do you hear me? She had rage inside of her. She was angry, and that's a dangerous thing for a vampire with a lot of energy and, and that is insatiable. Okay, and high metabolism. So she went out there on a killing spree, gorging herself, engorging herself with all types of people all across the Louisiana bayou. Like she was killing dozens of people, and so Lestat finally tells Louis, "Listen, she ain't up there." Because pigeons had started to fly in the room and stuff, so he just rips. They go upstairs to her casket. He rips the the lid off the casket, and true enough, she ain't there. But what was there was 2 of her diaries. And so Lestat gets him, and Louis tells him, "No, don't read that. That's private." And Lestat like, "Fuck that shit. I'm reading this shit." And he starts reading it. And Louis read a little bit too. And so, um, they have this dueling vote. Like Louis, for him, this is his daughter. This is his child. This is there's this attachment to him, and we'll talk a little bit more about this attachment and why there's this attachment to her a bit later in the episode. But Louis the nice one. Lestat's the mean one. Louis is nurturing. Lestat is like, child, I don't care about her, girl. I don't really care. And they um, they tell she comes home. They tell her, we read your diary. What you got going on? Where you been? What's going on? She is livid. She is incensed. She starts yelling, and they start yelling, and they tell her they know she been on a killing spree, killing all these people. What did you do with the bodies? Because we don't even got enough incinerator space to bury all them damn bodies. And she was like, I buried them. I buried them out in one of the cities that's low lying. But Louis was like, wait, that's a low lying area below sea level. Girl, when the next storm come, they gonna pop up out of the ground. And that's why, if you notice, when you go to New Orleans, all of their cemeteries have above ground. They bury people above ground. They'll make the plots out of stone, but they bury them above ground because they know they can't bury them underground. Otherwise, it ain't gonna do nothing but pop back up when the water comes or when a bad storm comes. So, um, she just at this point she feels like they have violated her privacy, and she screams and cracks the mirror and all of that kind of stuff. Um, and so forth. And it's just like one of those parental situations. The child done did bad, child done acted out, parent has to reprimand them, and the child ain't trying to hear no parts of the reprimand. And but the thing about it is, they still, because they see her as 14, they're still treating her like she's 14. And what she's trying to get them to understand is, I ain't 14 no more. I'm a young lady, and I need y'all to stop treating me this way. And so she's really, at this point, she's not here for it. And that's even with a normal human being. With a normal human being, young adults, when a child gets to their late teens, early 20s, they start to try to buck the system. There's usually, at some point during your development, there's this big standoff between you and your parents. It's either late teens or early 20s where you in their house and you feel like you grown and they feel like you ain't grown. And at some point, y'all get to an impasse and some got to give. And that's the point that they were at, with this. And so the next thing we see, just like we thought, a storm comes in and all of these bodies are floating in the water and so forth. And so after that, we find out. So of course, that alarms the town. It's all in the papers and things like that. So, and I forgot to mention, it's prohibition. It's the 20s, and it's prohibition in America. So you ain't supposed to be drinking or nothing like that. So they go to a speakeasy, and at the speakeasy is that white guy Tom, the guy who, that Louis bought the Azalea Hall from. He's there, and he's running for. Uh, Louisiana House of Representatives or something, and he's talking to Louis and Lestat about, oh, I could use some more money, and I could use your vote, and this, that, and the third. I could use your money and stuff. This ain't about the money. It ain't about their vote. This is about, because he mentioned the 50 plus body, because they were like, what is it, like 6 body? He was like 56. So he mentions all of that. He's doing all of this small talk with them to waste time. And so he says, the authorities have been suspecting, trying to figure out how these bodies died or what happened. Can they find out who's been murdering all of these people? And so he tells them, he says, I was sitting here by the police and by certain people, and they finally get that he's stalling because detectives and police are at their house. Now, so Louis and Lestat, freezes the room and, everything so they can get back home. The thing where they freeze the room so they can get back home real fast, but too late, they already there. Who's at the house? Claudia's at the house, which is fine in a normal sense. But what has Claudia been doing? She's been killing people. But not only has she been killing people, she been keeping souvenirs like a thumb here, a toe there. She had someone's whole torso in one of her drawers. Then we come to find out she is a whole man who's half dead. He ain't fully dead. He half dead. Because you hear him wheezing and everything, but it's flies flying all around him because his body, there goes my pen, is decaying or rotting or whatever's going on with him, but he ain't fully dead. He half dead. And so the detectives are going throughout the you know, house. So they get to Claudia's room because Louis and Lestat finally get there and they try to throw the detectives out. Oh, there's nothing to see here. Why is there a whole incinerator here? Oh, we sell incinerators and we try to show the people how it works before we sell it to them. They ain't buying it. So anyway, one of the detectives get to Claudia's room and can't get in. And the other detective downstairs was like, bust in there. Shoot, we here for a reason. So he busts in there and Claudia fakes like she puts a cover over her body and fakes like, I'm getting dressed, get out. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. He closes the door. And that's how she get away from them not seeing all the stuff in her room. Anyway, because the half dead man falls out, still wheezing all over the place, flies flying all over him. The police leave. Um, and when the police leave, they pull out the dead body and throw it on the table and they scold her. Like they go in on her. They really yell at her. They scold her. They reprimand her. And like I said, there's this moment in every young adult's life where you and your parents, enough is enough. I can't take this no more. And she had had enough. And um and so basically she leaves. She says, "Listen, I can't do this with y'all. That's it. I'm done." Um, and that was it. Um, but before that, I'm sorry, I forgot the big part. Sorry, y'all. I'm usually better at this. So during this whole argument, because usually, like I said, when you have these arguments, it gets heated and heated, and you start to really say things you shouldn't say. So during this whole argument, she yells at them. She was like, "Listen, y'all have each other. I have no one. Y'all love each other. I have no one." She even goes in on Lestat. She say, "Yeah, Louis, you have Lestat. Lestat, you got two people. You got Louis. And that chick you keep up over there in Algiers or whatever. She's like, yeah, bitch, because I've been following you because your ass been sloppy. And you got that white bitch over there that can't halfway sing and got a flat ass that you over there and you love her just as much as you love Louis. And Louis, you could see that was a gut punch for Louis because Louis didn't know the Antoinette chick was still in the situation. And Louis is jealous of the Antoinette chick because he knows see, sidebar. Here's the thing about gay relationships, at least for me. I'm not gonna speak for everybody. I've never been a fan of during the times where I dated men that were bisexual. I've never been a fan of the person that I'm with dating the opposite sex. If you cheat on me with the same sex, I can probably get over that and just chop that up to you being a fucked up ass person because they got everything I got. But when you cheat on me with the opposite sex, they have a whole something that I can't even offer you, which means in my brain that there's always going to be some jealousy there for me because how do I know that you're going to be looking for something that I don't even have the capability of giving you and you're not going to always be wanting and lusting for that. So there's this extra added level and heightened jealousy there. And so I kind of felt Louis in that moment. That's where he was. He was like, oh, you still with that bitch? Oh, it's like that. Oh, okay. And Claudia called Lestat right on out. Mm-hmm. And she yelled at him. She says, which one of you are going to fuck me? Because there was a part of her diary. Okay, so apparently the vampires, when they get injured, their body heals back to the state that it was in when they were made. Unfortunately for um, uh, Claudia, when she was made, she was a virgin. She was a 14-year-old girl who was a virgin. So every time she had sex, of course, sex tears membranes and enters the body to a little bit. Yes, it feels good, but there's tissue and parts of the body that gets torn and injured. And so what her body does is she remarks about it in her diary that every time she has sex, her body reverts back and she goes back to being a virgin. And she says, am I going to be a virgin every time I have sex? When in her diary, which was a very interesting thing because I never even thought about that. She even talked about trying to make other little boys into a vampire. She was trying to make them. She was trying to set them like you saw all of the bite marks on her wrist because she wanted to make another boy into a vampire. So she had someone she could love. Remember, she just lost Charlie, who she thought was the love of her life. I mean, you always think like that when you're a teenager, but she every day looks at Louis and Lestat and what they have, and she wants that too. So she's like, she's been making trying to make all of these boys and ends up killing them each time because she hasn't perfected how to do that. Um, and so she said, "Listen, I'm going to go find some other vampires." And Lestat and her have words, and Lestat calls her a mistake and this, that, and the third. Um, and she yells at Louis. She looks at Louis for protection. She says, and I wrote it down. She said, "He treats us like shit, and you take it. Why is that?" And Louis, and so this is the time this argument changed a lot because Claudia started to poke holes into this persona of what Lestat was to Louis. So Claudia in this argument started poking holes into the whole aura and persona of what Louis was. I'm sorry, what Lestat was for Louis. And Louis valued what she said and he started to um, really take it in, and Lestat caught that, and that's why Lestat was throwing jabs at her. Oh, you're a mistake. Oh, this, that, and the third, and it got ugly from there. And she tells, she says, listen, um, that she tells Louis that Lestat is actually tired of both of them. He's tired of the housewife, which is what Louis is, and he's tired of the mistake. And it just got real ugly. She storms out and she gone. Lestat then has to explain Antoinette to Louis. Louis really wasn't that concerned about Antoinette in the immediacy of that moment. He really was concerned where Claudia was going. But Claudia packed her stuff, stormed the fuck out, and was gone. And Lestat knew he had fucked up and knew he had been caught. And so he was like, don't worry. I've been, having a good time with her, but I'm going to kill her soon. Child, if you believe that. So Claudia, like I said, she went upstairs, she packed her stuff. Louis goes after her. She's angry, and basically she tells Louis, she has this argument with Louis and says, listen, why did you make me? he said, you were barely breathing. She said, but I was breathing. You could have took me to the hospital. You didn't have to bring me here so I could become a vampire and be trapped in this 14-year-old body for the rest of my life. I could have maybe the hospital would have found a way to get me, to revive me or make me, keep me alive. I could have possibly been married, maybe had some kids. I could have been having a good life, but you took all of that away from me. And she's very angry. So then we get back to present day, and she storms out. She leaves. So we get back to present day. Louis has and Dave, they have a discussion all about Claudia, because Louis is still trying to protect Claudia. He doesn't want Claudia to be looked at in a negative light. He doesn't want people seeing her as this awful entity, which she was at times. And Daniel is like, bruh, once it's out there, you can't control how people will see it or how people will ingest it or what people will think, or look at Claudia. It's there. They get to do with it what they want. Um, and so forth. Then we get back to going back to the flashback, going back to back in the which was the 20s, 1920s, and Louis and Lestat, because of all of these bodies, because of the police looking for bodies and thinking it's them, and after that he says, they agree, listen, we have to go into hiding. We won't come out. We Lestat agrees that he'll hunt on the outskirts of town. Louis says he ain't gonna go out. He'll just get them to bring them the rats or the animals to the back door. And they basically went into hiding for 7 years, never really coming out for 7 years. Um, Louis then talks about wandering the city, calling out for Claudia through telepathy, and just calling out and apologizing and just calling her name night after night, saying he's sorry, apologizing to her. And Lestat sees this and knows this, and you could tell this is bothering Lestat. Like his longing for Claudia was much deeper than the longing that he had for Lestat, and Lestat didn't like that. So we then see Claudia. She went to college. She went and started searching. And in my estimation, remember she said she wanted to go out and find other vampires. So she definitely was started traveling the country, going to colleges, and she was reading these books. And she would start to read these books to try to find information about other vampires, where they were, find out about if there was any writings that could give her inclinations of where other vampires were located, or any information on who she was and how vampires go about, being. And so she was at one of these colleges at the library, and this white boy at the college started bothering her. Oh, do you belong here? Remember, it's still the 20s, okay? Still Jim Crow. Oh, you don't belong here. Why are you in the library? She lied and said, oh, well, my mom cleans the bathrooms, and I take care of the bathroom, and I read books while she's in the bathroom. And he was like, you can read? And the whole racist thing with the white boy. So another white man drives up on a motorcycle. He's a vampire, and so he talks to Claudia through telepathy, and he says, "You want to feed on him?" And so eventually, they go feed on him. Meanwhile, back in New Orleans, Louis basically just done gave up on everything. He ain't cleaning the house. He's barely eating. He don't give a shit about Lestat no more. Like the place is dirty. He just gave up on everything. He's just at this point, he's in his own funk and depression. He's ready to get out this goddamn house. It's just a shit show in the goddamn house. And he blames Lestat, and he talks about trying to um trying to irritate Lestat because he blames Lestat for Claudia leaving. From back when he forced Claudia to watch, starting from when he forced Claudia to watch Charlie burn, and then the things that he kept saying to Claudia, and he kept trying to do these things to make Claudia more angry. So he blames Lestat. And at this point, the spell is over. Louis don't see it for Lestat like he used to. Like that whole, oh, I'm infatuated, oh, I'm spellbound. Baby, that was over. So then we get back to Claudia talking to the Bruce, the other vampire. So Bruce is telling her all about when he was made and about his maker and everything like that. And so Bruce says, "Oh, I heard a guy calling for you." And he said, "I heard." And she was like, "You heard that?" She was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty good at hearing things." And he says, "Yep, I heard this guy named Louis calling for you and apologizing to you and so forth." And then we come to find out he's been following Claudia. He'd been basically stalking her, following her, because Claudia had been on a killing spree from college to college to college. She was researching, but she was also killing a lot of people at these colleges. And so Bruce, this other vampire, had been following her, and so they have this whole situation. He tries to rub up on her. She jumps up real fast, and he was like, because he asked her how old are you. She's I'm 104, and so basically he breaks her leg. She falls to the ground, and he rapes her, and it's traumatic. And for me, that toughened her. You hate for that to happen, but this is a part of her maturation process. She's going through this period of time where she is going to these colleges, but it's like a young adult in college. What do? You go out and you find yourself, and you go learn who you are going to be as an adult, and you learn the things you like and you don't like. You learn so much, and you have these traumatic and horrible experiences that happen to you, and that's what happened to her. She had this traumatic experience, and it was an awful experience, but it toughened her, and it made her into a whole different person. And so we get back to present day, and Daniel's reading the diary, but the pages where she talks about what happened to her with Bruce is ripped out. Louis done ripped them out. And so Daniel is like, listen, he wants to read it, but Louis is adamant, no, you're not reading that part. You will not. I told you I'm going to protect her. I am not going to do anything that harms her. And so Daniel keeps pushing, and Louis uses telekinesis now to control Daniel's hand. And I thought it was Parkinson's at first, but Louis did this thing where through telekinesis he was forcing Daniel's hand to bam against the table, and then and Rashid has to come and stop Louis. Rashid literally has to come and tell Louis no, stop, and grab Louis and make him stop. And so Daniel's hand stops bamming against the table, and Daniel gets up and just slaps Louis. And there's this whole little like standoff between the two where you can see Louis is real serious and Daniel's real serious too. And so there's a very tense moment right then. And thank God that Rashid was there, because who knows what would have happened at that moment. So then we flip back in the day. Louis is still searching for Claudia all over the place. He's looking through articles, finding all these articles about all of these skills at colleges. He's telling Lestat that must be her, that must be her. Lestat ain't here for it. All Lestat wants is Louis. He wants his love from Louis. Louis is his, and to Lestat, Louis is almost like his property. And this is where things started to come to light to me. I wrote down in my notes, things started to come to light to me. This is where the writers and the directors and producers took a turn. Remember how I kept talking about in the beginning of the series that this extra added piece of Louis being black adds an extra layer? Here is where this extra layer comes through, because there are moments now that you kind of realize, now that the rose colored glasses are off, this was almost like, and y'all might disagree with me, but this is kind of the way I saw it. It almost like Louis was his property. He made Louis. So it was almost like he felt like he owned Louis. Remember, Louis remarked in I think episode 2 or 3, that Lestat was saying something to Lestat is very jealous of Louis' connection to Claudia, and that Louis has this unwavering love and connection with Claudia and not with him anymore. And so Louis is still trying to find her, calling for her. Louis gets a call from his sister Grace. Grace calls him, and he meets her at the cemetery. So Grace says, "Listen, the stock market crash. Now we're in the stock market crash that happened. It hit Grace and her family hard. They ain't got no more money. She tell Louis, I don't want your money. Don't try and give it to me. I ain't asking for it. We moving to Boston. I done found me a job. We gonna go up there. We gonna make a life for ourselves in Boston. But listen, hey boo, I prayed. I ain't get no answers. So this is how it's got to be." And they turn, and she has had the grave, the family plot where the mom was at. She's had Louis's name inscribed in it to signal that he has to mark the grave now, so he's officially dead. And she tells him, she says, "I don't know who you are, but you're not my brother. You're not Louis. I know Louis. I sat across him my whole life. I grew up with him, and I know you're not the Louis that I grew up with him." And she tells him, "Listen, whoever or whatever he is, he ain't her brother Louis no more." And so he's officially dead. Um, Now, and this breaks Louis, because that that was a physical and tangible evidence that he was officially dead. There was no going back. He was dead to the family. He was dead to the world. And that crushes him. That breaks him. All the while, hiding behind one of the cemetery plots is Claudia. Claudia watches the whole thing and immediately realizes why Louis needed her. She said he needed her to be a sister. He needed a family now. And so, and that's when it came full circle. The bond with Claudia, yes, was the fact that it was like a father daughter bond. But the difference is Louis and Claudia have the bond of both being black and Creole, but they're black. And y'all know how black people, y'all know how we are as black people. This is in our nature. We have a bond. There's a bond between black people that is, it's, we know what it is. It's the silent, it's that connection, it's that bond to every other black person that you have. And there was this bond between Claudia and Louis that Lestat was never going to have. And so Claudia comes home and she, apologizes. Lestat ain't here for none of it. Lestat was like, prodigal girl comes home, girl, I ain't here for you, and da da da. And so Louis is so happy that she came home. This is really like the prodigal child come home. He's so happy, and Lestat is incensed. Lestat yells and says, "Wait a goddamn minute! 1,000 days you've been crying over her, and then as soon as she come home, you just gonna take her back?" Lestat done turned into the prodigal son that we heard about in the Bible. He is incensed. He was like, "I know the fuck you lying. You don't believe that shit." Baby, she says, "Listen, I told y'all Claudia had unclocked teeth. Claudia, she learned. She's grown. She matured. That college process taught her a lot. The trauma that she went through made her tougher. She ain't the same Claudia that she left there as. And she came there, she started calling Lestat out on all his teeth. And so she says, "Listen, I read all of them books that you read, and we found out from Louis that Lestat really don't read the whole books. He only read the first pages and tries to act like he's smart. Claudia ain't that. Claudia done read the whole books, so she know it all. So she was like, I read about all these places. I plan on going down." And he tries to scare her, and she sees right through it. He tries all his little manipulations. She says, "Matter of fact, I'm coming here to take Louis with me." And so he tries all his manipulations, the fear tactics, the scare things, the she tried it with Louis, and she started talking to Louis through telepathy and telling Louis, "Don't fall for it. He always do this. He's doing the same thing he do every time," and so forth. And she started just carving Lestat away, just carving him up, letting Louis know, "Don't fall for it. He ain't shit. I see through it." And so, um, after that, Lestat, of course, doesn't want Louis to leave. So when Claudia started telling Louis all of these things, Louis sides with Claudia. And Lestat sees that. Lestat is livid. So he goes and he attacks Claudia, and Louis, attacks him for attacking Claudia. And baby, the bludgeoning began. Listen, when I tell you they was fighting, this was an epic fight scene. I wish they would have showed us more. You know, I love a good fight scene, the blood and the gore, because they were showing you glimpses where you would see somebody get knocked through a wall or knocked through baby, I wanted to see the fight. I wanted to see the blood and the gore. And so Claudia doesn't know what to do. And the whole time, Louis keeps telling Claudia, "It's okay. Don't come over here. I got this. Don't worry about it." He's protecting her that whole time. It's that bond, that connection. Y'all know this connection. See, this is different from this. Anyway, he's protect. Don't worry about it. I got it. It's okay. We okay. Don't worry about it. All the while, Louis and getting his ass drugged. You hear me? And I think part of it was was Lestat more powerful than Louis? Perhaps. But I think part of it was Louis didn't want Lestat to go in there and get Claudia. So whatever he could do to keep Lestat focused on him and not going over there and ripping Claudia apart, he was going to do that. So you get to a part, he done beat Louis down, just beat him to a pulp. He's dragging him by this gaping hole in Louis' neck, and he's dragging him down the block. And Claudia runs and says, "Listen, he didn't do nothing. Leave him alone. It's me you want." And Lestat looks back at her and say, "It was never you. It was never you. This ain't got nothing to do with you. It was always him." And he grabs Louis, Lestat, and they start flying in the air, floating in the air. They go up like 30,000 feet like a plane. And Lestat is telling Louis that he loves him. And um and Louis doesn't say anything back to Lestat. And Lestat says for Louis to tell him that he will never love him. He begs Louis to tell him, "Just at least tell me you will never love me." And Louis says, "Let me go." And at that moment, Lestat knew, yeah, this ain't happening. And Lestat was even more angry and said, "All right, anything for you, my love." And he's a jilted and jaded queen, a jilted and jaded lover. He lets Lestat go from like 30,000 feet. Lestat falls to the ground, just crashes into the ground, body all mangled up. Claudia goes and runs after him and caresses him. And then while she's over there attending to Louis, you see Lestat float down. And I found it very interesting. Lestat is this pasty pale white man dressed and draped in all black, right? And he's floating down without a hair out of place, without a piece of clothing out of place. And it now y'all follow me here. It gave off this metaphoric like air of white supremacy. I know I could be reaching, but that's what it gave off to me. The way he just floated down and kind of towered over them and looked at these two mangled black bodies and looked over them with this air of white supremacy, like, mm-hmm, you're beneath me. Y'all got y'all little bond. Keep y'all little bond. Keep you black people. Y'all can have y'all little bond, but please realize I will always be above you. I'll always be over you. You'll always be slaves beneath me. And I'm not gonna say slave, but you'll always be beneath me. So there was this air of white supremacy because the way he floated down and had this look on his face to let her know and him know. Oh yeah, y'all hoes probably didn't even know I could fly. Y'all hoes didn't know none of this. I can fuck you bitches up at any point. So there was this metaphoric and allegoric air of white supremacy there. And it goes off from there. Listen, listen, I know this was long, but it was a lot this episode. It was so good. I'm almost spent talking about it. Anyway, y'all, let's get down to the comment section. I'm so excited to see how this season ends. Let's get down in the comment section. Let me know how you think. Let's good about what you saw and what I saw. That's all I got for y'all. Until next time, thank y'all for coming. Y'all drive safely. I'm out.